Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear where you think we got it right and where you think we completely missed the mark. You can do that on rumble.com. Great comment section there. Of course, our website, unsilentpodcast.com, or any of the great public square in America, social media, where people go to have respectful and nice discussions with one another. So, speaking of respectful and nice discussions, in the last week, there's been a little bit of still continuing to deal with the Kimmel fallout and the Kirk fallout and everything that's happened from that.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I wanna share something with you that it's about a minute and a half long. It's a little longer than I would normally like to share on here, but there's been this conversation about gun control in our general conversation. I mean, as long as I can remember, so my adulthood and probably leading up to before that. But I came across a clip that it's an actor. You'll probably recognize him when I play the video. He's in a lot of American TV shows, and I think he was on The Wire is one where he was pretty popular. But he's a British, or he's from the UK or Britain or something like that. But I share this because it illustrates a couple points I think are worth remarking about in this era. Again, for those listening for the first time, we're trying to explain to future generations what this moment in time was like. So I'm gonna share this clip, and I just want to get a couple of your initial thoughts after I play. So this is an actor. What is his name here? Idris Elba is his name.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So a very great, good actor.
He is
I like
great
him.
actor,
He does, but here he is talking about knife violence in the UK.
The truth is that kitchen knives are perhaps 25% of the knives used in most of the terrible crimes. That's one of the stats in the films. And those kitchen knives are usually a domestic situation. Okay. So kitchen knives, of course, it's very difficult. They're a domestic knife. I do think there is areas of innovation that we can do with kitchen knives. I hate to say it, not all kitchen knives need to have a point on them. That sounds like a crazy thing to say, but actually it would reduce. You can still cut your food without the point on the knife, which is an innovative way to sort of look at it. And in a country in crisis, I'm sorry, but yeah, let's look at that. But the truth is, all knives, the loophole on the heritage knives allows the sale of ninja swords to be sold. So while, you've got your granddad's sword on there and you want that, that's fine, of course, but it is leaving a loophole for someone to carry a ninja sword. So let's ban them all. And if you have one of those knives, get a license for it. Simple as that. And I think it's a small contribution to society if you say, right, I'm going to back that. I'll get a license for my granddad's sword, because it is leaving, these kids vulnerable.
All right. So...
Okay.
Of course, in the UK, they don't have guns, so guns cannot be the blame, and they do have it seems like a stabbing epidemic over there. So the natural conclusion, of course, is we need to ban knives with a point on them. What do you think, Dave? Is that going to solve the problem?
Well, I mean, why stop there? I mean, we should certainly ban cricket paddles, right? Because you can use those to kill a person. I mean, so if you ban knives, the only ones that'll have knives are criminals, right? So let's keep going on down the road. So let's ban cricket rackets, or whatever they call those. We should probably ban. Well, they don't play baseball in really much in the UK, I don't think so, because that's probably the reason they lost the war. I mean, I'll say this: it's consistent with the leftist mindset. It's consistent with the leftist mindset. The leftist mindset is it can't possibly be the human, so let's ban the thing that is under the control of the human. And so, but eventually you're going to run out of things to ban, because we're either that or we're all going to walk around in big, you remember the Michelin tire guy, the big puffy guy? We're all going to walk around in Michelin tire suits, not able to touch each other or anything because, anything can be used to kill. Well, he hit him over the head with a hammer. Well, we're going to have carpenters in the streets of London protesting because they're banning hammers next. I mean, just the whole philosophy is based on a falsehood. It's based on a falsehood. Yeah, you could save a few lives by banning knives, I suppose. Maybe, I don't know.
Pointy knives, Dave. Come on, not only don't get crazy here.
Pointy knives. Well, yeah. So next is going to be like, okay, well, we banned all the pointy knives, and now we're requiring each citizen to get a band around every place where you can use the cutting or serrated edge of the knife to cut your wrists, cut your neighbor's wrists, cut the random guy on the you got to have your carotid artery protectors on. All the citizens have to wear those. I mean, we're getting into the area of absurdity with this stuff because there is not a recognition that the problem is the people. The problem is always the people. I don't care what you talk about in life. There's things out there, and I actually have a knife. It's sitting in my it's actually a very nice hunting knife kind of thing. I probably shouldn't admit that out loud, but it's sitting in. But I'm not going to Britain with it, so I suppose I'm okay. It's sitting in my bag, and I'm just kind of worried. I need you to watch behind me, Brian, to make sure that it doesn't jump out of my bag and stab me in the back on its own. Well, so this stuff drives me crazy. This stuff just drives me crazy.
Yeah. It feels to me like a tremendous amount of mental calories being burnt to avoid a simple question.
Yes.
Which would be, if we think we have an epidemic of violence, why do we have an epidemic of violence? What? It seems to me like that's the logical question to ask, rather than focusing on the tool of choice, whether it be a gun or a knife or rat poison or cars. We had the guy in Kenosha drive through the parade. People get pushed off of bridges and pushed onto subway tracks, and it just feels like working a lot of mental overtime to avoid the obvious question, which would be, why do people? What drives people to do this outside what you would consider normal lunacy, which would be a very, very small, tiny fraction of the percentage of the population. Okay, if we believe it's a epidemic beyond quote unquote the normal range of human activity, why is it happening? And I think it's because they wouldn't like the answer. I think the answers are somewhat predictable, and they probably wouldn't like the answers. Up in the top 3 to 5 would probably be the lack of fathers. I suspect they're not going to want to find that to be one of the answers. So we got to do everything we can to avoid anything that might point to that conclusion.
Right. Well, the thing that's frustrating about all this, Brian, is that we've got 10,000, maybe 20,000, if you really stretch it, years of history that we can look and see how human beings behave. We can see things. We can see things like mental illness. We can see things like jealousy and rage and anger and stealing from one another. We can see all of the things that make this happen. And we know all the things that make all this happen. And yet we're trying to find a way to, and I think this is the cause of this. We're trying to find a way to be nice to people. Right? I mean,
we got to avoid shame at all costs.
We have to avoid shame at all costs. Exactly right. And this Western society has gotten to the point where it's exactly right. We have to avoid shame at all costs, and therefore we are going to bypass a cogent, sound sense of reality in an attempt to say that people that want to commit violence are not going to be able to if we just prevent every physical kinds of way they could commit violence. But people, it turns out, are quite
I want to amend my statement. I want to amend my statement too. We must avoid shame at all costs for particular kinds of people.
Well, sure. People that have been
some shame is being heaped in bucket loads right now.
well, sure. I mean, so you do indeed have to go back to the thing that drives the current controversy, which is the oppressor oppressed matrix. You know,
Right.
whether you call it colonizers or colonized, all of this stuff has to do with the oppressor oppressed matrix. So people with power are oppressors. People without power, who tend to be the ones that or people that perceive they're without power or are guilty because they come from a place of power. Like a lot of the people that commit these crimes are upper class people that are ashamed of their place in life, I think, and so they commit a crime. So you've got the mentally ill and the well-off people that are ashamed of what success they or their parents have had, and they commit a crime. So yeah, it's all back to that. And unless we ditch that, unless we get a fundamentally sound understanding of how human beings behave, we've got thousands of years of history to look at how human beings behave. Unless we get that right, we're not going to fix anything by banning this and banning that and blunting our knives and everything else.
Yeah. I still kind of go back to what I was asking last week. What you just said was we need to have a fundamental understanding of human nature. I suspect that your first statement was correct, that we have enough data to give us that understanding. It's a willful disregard for the evidence.
Yes.
So to speak.
Yeah, it's complete willful disregard for it because it's there. And here's the thing, Brian. Everybody knows it. I would bet you, because so like Idris Elba as an actor, I really like the guy. I mean,
I like his stuff a lot. Yeah,
and he's said other things that I found to be quite insightful. In this, he's lost his mind. He's crazy. He's nuts. That's just ridiculous. And I'm sorry. I like the guy, but this is stupid.
Yeah.
But I suspect deep down when he's saying this stuff, part of him is saying, what are you even talking about, man? What are you? Because, and this is where we've talked about cognitive dissonance before, the knowledge that what we're saying is on some level complete BS, but we say it anyway because that's what society wants to hear. That's cognitive dissonance.
My interpretation, knowing, and this is a completely unfair interpretation, I don't know the guy, I never had a conversation with him, it's completely unfair, but I'm going to make it anyway, is that he believes this elevates his status, and that elevation of his status is worth more to him than the factual information.
Speaking the truth. Because speaking the actual truth in this situation, and again, I don't know, maybe he's so indoctrinated in the kind of the leftist broth of,
seems like a pretty bright guy to me. I don't know.
Well, he does. He does. And so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and saying he's just protecting his own skin.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, again, for those listening and wondering why we're talking about this, Dave and I try to talk about things to reflect the mood of the era, what it's like to live through this time that probably won't make the history books. I didn't think that would make whatever digitized history book Kenny G 70 years from now will be studying in middle school, if they still have such a thing. But I thought it was a pretty good reflection of the current moment. And it was fascinating to me because we're so hung up on guns here. It's like, okay, well, what would happen if you removed all the guns? Well, this is what would happen.
Yeah, this is exactly what would happen. Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing is, see, this is the other little tangent. I won't go too far with this, but the other little tangent on the whole gun debate is the fact that different cultures have different personalities. And so the Brits are generally more chill than we are. I mean, it's just, maybe that's oversimplification, but if we did the same thing that they did, then I'm going to guess that our knife violence would be 10 times on a per capita basis what theirs is, because we're a bunch of rabble-rousing pioneers, and they're a bunch of people that when they go to the judge is wearing curls still.
Yeah. By the way, I wasn't planning to talk about this, but you brought up something just like their culture and like their the pomp and circumstance and formalities of things. Trump had some kind of formal dinner there last week, and they sat at a table that seats 150 people.
Yeah.
I've never even seen a table like that before.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of thing you're going to have in Britain. Yeah.
The spouses sat across for the table. They like 4 feet apart, and 75 people to get around to them. The circumference of the table from you didn't sit next to your spouse. I thought that was kind of odd, and I guess the idea is to get monarch culture or monarch regimes to speak to that you don't want the king just talking to the king. You want the king to get to know the other king's wife, and
sure,
and the dukes to get the other dukes wives, and the wives to get to know the other earls' husbands, and what I guess I suppose that's the idea. I don't know, but
well, so I'll float a little idea past you, and this goes to everything we're talking about now. I think the reason for that, and also the reason that the Brits, or one of the reasons that the Brits are also a little bit more, subdued, maybe oftentimes. I mean, the marches in London wouldn't indicate that these days, but they're a little bit more subdued than we are as sort of a general rule, is because they have this long weight of tradition and history. So those tables are probably the way that they have been for 500 years or 1,000 years or something like that. And so I think, what do we have? Our old buildings are 200 years old. The oldest, that's ancient, but it's Brits. What do you think that's ancient? I mean, we got stuff that goes back to the Cro-Magnon era, So I think that affects the culture, in that we don't have this real kind of, we kind of make it up as we go. And as a result of that, we do tend to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, I would say, but a little bit wilder. And that's going to contribute to our, rowdiness and criminality in this country. It's just part of who we are.
And I suspect, again, if somebody could wave a magic wand and get rid of all the guns, the same kinds of people who commit gun violence would commit knife violence or poison violence or pushing people off bridges violence. I don't
think it would run over cars or whatever.
I don't think it would really change the outcomes all that much, which is part of the reason why the whole gun debate just kind of I don't give it much credence at all, because I believe if you removed a tool and they had to use a screwdriver and a pickaxe and a hammer instead, they would use a screwdriver, pickaxe, and a hammer instead. If it's in your heart to kill somebody, obviously you're going to use whatever the easiest weapon is, but if that easiest weapon isn't there, you'd move on to the second easiest, or whatever the easiest one is in the absence of the first easiest one.
Well, and that's especially true because the vast majority of gun violence in this country is suicide. So if you're suicidal and there's no gun around, I guess I'm not suicidal anymore. That's not how it works.
No. Well, we just saw a guy who tried to stab himself in the throat with a pen yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly. That was quite a trip. Yeah.
All right. So the big news since I saw you last was the removal of Jimmy Kimmel. I'm going to see if I get the corporate media version of this correct. Jimmy Kimmel was removed by the Trump administration and then reinstated by Disney. And then, did I get that right?
That's basically the narrative. That's basically the narrative that a significant portion of the country believes. Now, it is also true that a significant portion of the country still believes that the assassin is probably harboring secret MAGA thoughts too. So there's some people that are clinging to that narrative still too. But you got it right. That's the kind of the corporate line.
So you and I didn't get a chance to talk about this. I suspect that not very many people will agree with what I have to say about the Jimmy Kimmel thing, because I think that a whole bunch of things happened at once that probably created a picture of an event that didn't quite go down the way any of us really interpreted. So the FCC chair, whatever Carr, his last name, he did say some things that were, I would prefer that they don't get into that realm of deciding.
They're problematic. Bottom line, they're problematic. He shouldn't have said
who says what and whatever. And I've had that belief since the FCC went after Howard Stern in the late 90s, and the FCC says we can't define what they say. They couldn't define what was the word they used. I can't remember. We can't define it, but we know what it is when we see it. And it was like
was that pornography or something?
Pornography. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah. We can't define pornography, but we know it when we see it.
We know.
Okay, that's that's a pretty BS standard. I don't care who's in the White House and who's the chair of the SEC. So all along, I've kind of had the belief that they ought to just let the market do what the market does on that kind of thing.
Totally.
That said, Jimmy Kimmel does work for an affiliate that has a license with requirements that CNN doesn't have, for example, or HBO doesn't have, or Disney Plus doesn't have, or whatever. And whether or not he violated those, I don't know. I would err on the side of acting more discreetly than making public pronouncements that you're going to do. I just think that on its face, it looks bad, even if that wasn't your intent. Like, you need to be wise enough not to say stupid stuff like that publicly.
Right, exactly.
And the part that was left out of the story by the corporate media was, his ratings are down 37% in the last 10 years or whatever. And he gets like 126,000 viewers a night, and the show costs $40 million or whatever year it is to put on. And like you and I know as business owners that math doesn't math very well. And so it could be that, ABC or Disney was kind of using this as a reason to kind of go ahead and do a thing that they were going to do anyway. And also the thing that was left out was the two major affiliates for ABC stations. I think they have 126 stations or something like that, said they weren't going to air it anymore because he said something that was flat out not true, provable that it was not true. He was not making a joke. He was making a statement that was flat out was not accurate. And they decided that they were going to preempt the show. That part was left out of the story. There, so it's a perfect storm for whichever tribe you're in. You can conjure up whatever story you want. And I think the FCC made a bonehead decision.
Oh yeah.
I think the Sinclair and the other affiliate that has 120. Listen, if they're in markets where people are saying we don't want to watch this crap, I think they're fully within their rights to say we don't want to air it. If they're having a hard time selling advertisements for a show in certain markets, or it just rubs them the wrong way and it goes against their values, I think that they're within their rights to do that. And you throw in the First Amendment argument. Yep, we have the First Amendment. We can say what we want. We also the only country I know that guarantees the right to speech and guarantees that you're not obligated to have speech.
Right.
And how you navigate those things, those two rights. There's no right to employment. There's no right to having influential positions, whether it be in teachers, firefighters, like we talked about last year, fire chiefs, like we talked about last week or whatever. So all these things kind of just created a perfect scenario where whatever tribe you're in, you could create the story where your tribe was the righteous one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is the shame of where we're at, because for one, there would be no question about any of this in my mind about how it went down if Brendan Carr didn't open his mouth and didn't say what he said, which is, it was dumb. It was just dumb. Why did you do this? Yes, he did. They didn't physically do anything that anybody could prove that they didn't call Bob Iger and say, hey, Bob, you got to take him up there. I mean, so there's no evidence that there was anything that was done. But, when you're in a position, when you're a secretary or the leader of an executive branch agency, what you say does indeed matter. It does matter. Yeah. And so it provides all the cover that everybody needs. What he said provides all the cover. Well, and then just recently, I think President Trump said something very similar to that today. About these stay out of it. Let the market work.
Yeah.
If they had all done that, then the case would have been super, super ultra simple. Jimmy Kimmel said something we don't like. Our affiliates don't like it in these different markets, and we're in the business of serving our customers, and therefore he is fired. End of story. End of story. That's nothing needs to be said.
So I blame all the players except for the two affiliates. I think that the FCC did a bonehead thing. I think Trump did a bonehead thing. I certainly think Jimmy Kimmel did a bonehead thing. I think Disney and ABC did a bonehead thing.
Yes, absolutely.
The only ones I think were like acting straight up were the affiliates who said, you know what, we don't want to air this stuff for whatever reason, whether it's financial or went against their values or they thought wasn't serving their clients. But everyone had a plausible villain to point the finger at to get them out of the hot water for their own bonehead mistake.
And what's frustrating about this, Brian? All of these people all of these people are not morons. They're
Right.
all smart enough to know how this is going to play out. If they would have called me and said, Dave, we're going to offer you a $500,000 contract to consult with us on this, and your contract is contingent for making us look good, I would have, one, taken the money. Yeah. Two,
Yeah.
I would have saved them all of this trouble, because it's all, you take your foot, you put it on a block, and you start pounding on it. Yes, they stepped in it. They just, oh, it's just so frustrating to watch smart people in positions of power do ridiculously dumb things.
Okay, so that to me is the lesser story, but the lead in for the bigger story, which is, so Jimmy Kimmel's in Reinstated.
Yes.
Now, meanwhile, as he was canceled, or preempted, or put on suspension, what temporarily taken off the air, however you want to phrase it, the likes of Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris and the usual players were talking about. Well, here's what Barack Obama said on Twitter. After years of complaining about cancel culture, the current administration has taken to a new and dangerous level by routinely threatening regulatory action against media companies unless they muzzle or fire reporters and commentators it doesn't like. Now, that was like the day that Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air. Okay. And the thing I love about the internet now is, like, everything lives, like, there's no such thing as like a short-term memory in the internet. People archive things that are deleted. Like Keith Olbermann put something up and took it down like 10 minutes later, and it was already circulated that he had done this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is the statement that Barack Obama made less than a week ago about how Trump has taken it to a new level, blah, blah, blah. Right above that is an Axios story. Michelle Obama calls on Twitter and Facebook to permanently ban Trump from January 1st, 2021.
Sure.
Okay. We've got Kamala Harris on the day 9/18, so right around the time Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air. She says, "What we are witnessing is an outright abuse of power. This administration is attacking critics and using fear as a weapon to silence anyone who would speak out. Media corporations, from television networks to newspapers, are capitulating to these threats. We cannot dare to be silent or complacent in the face of this frontal assault on free speech. We, the people, deserve better." And then right above that is a CNN story from August 27, 2021. Mark Zuckerberg says Meta was pressured by a Biden administration to censor COVID-related content in 2021. So a few days after Jimmy Kimmel was put back on, or suspended, he was put back on last night as you and I are recording this. Yesterday, as you and I are recording this, the day he was put back on, Jim Jordan's whatever oversight committee he's on finally got Google to admit that YouTube censored people for COVID-19 and election related stuff. They deplatformed, they took people down, whatever. Here are some of the bullet points from the findings from the House Judiciary Committee, which is chaired by Jim Jordan. Number one, the Biden administration pressured Google to censor Americans and remove content that did not violate YouTube's policies. So there was no violation. They pressured them to take it down anyway. The Biden administration censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong. Number three, public debate should never come at the expense of relying authorities. I think they missed on a word there, relying on authorities. I'm not sure. Number four, the company will never use third-party fact checkers. That was interesting. And number five, Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech, including the removal of quote-unquote lawful content. So as people from everyday citizens that you and I live next to posting their opinions on Facebook and Twitter and things like that about how wrong this is that Jimmy Kimmel was taken down, my question goes back to the one I brought up, I think 6 weeks ago, which is kind of like my version of Thomas Sowell's questions. Like he said, you could overcome any progressive argument by asking two questions. At what cost was one, and I don't remember what the second one was, but the third one I would add into his mix there was, what was the date you started caring about this? Because none of these people had a peep to say about Dr. Bhattacharya and all those doctors being the nurses in Texas being silenced about all their concerns about the vaccine. No peep from any of these folks about that. Jimmy Kimmel gets taken off the air, and it's the First Amendment's out the window. And I come back to like, okay, well, what was the date you started caring about this? Because arguably it was a bigger impact to the society, the censorship and deplatforming and canceling of people 5 years ago, than Jimmy Kimmel and his 300 employees, 400 employees or whatever it is. Arguably bigger impact then. Bupkis as far as concerned then, and now like the wheels are coming off the democracy as we know it.
And let's not forget something. So like when you were reading President Obama's statement, right? What came to mind was, and there was outrage about this across the board about, you remember Obama was targeting reporters during his administration, and even some on the left said this is an unprecedented assault on the freedom of the press. And for Obama to, okay, I'm going to use the H word. There's the H word with all this hypocrisy. I mean, so Obama targets reporters with the sanction of the federal government, threatening them with all sorts of things, confiscating their stuff, a direct frontal assault on the First Amendment, not just in terms of, well, I don't think they should do this, but, like what Brendan Carr's moronic statement was, but actually doing things to attack reporters. Now, I would say that reporters, even reporters from places like the New York Times or Washington Post, hold a more significant position in our society as a category than Jimmy Kimmel does as a late night political commentator. I'm not going to use the word comic because he was a comic, I realize at one point, but it doesn't seem to be anymore. That to me is, I don't know how what happens to people is Pinocchio nose didn't get bigger when he started talking about all this stuff. And it was Obama that attempted, you remember the Lois Lerner IRS targeting scandal. Well, they don't like the people that are opposed, the religious people that are opposed to Obamacare, and so we got to shut them down. We got to use the IRS to shut these people down. You remember that? So there was that. We can go step by step by step. The Biden administration, and the Congress has all of the emails from Facebook, from Google, all these places that create a clear evidentiary line of official government threats to these organizations. And you're telling us that preempting Jimmy Kimmel for a few days is an assault on democracy.
Or even if it was, because at that point it was indefinite, it could have been forever. Even if it was forever.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. The hypocrisy of these people is so staggering to me that it's just hard to wrap my head around it.
So because I think these Thomas Sowell quotes are questions are good. So the first one is at what cost? The second one is compared to what?
Yeah.
And the third one he has is what hard evidence do you have? So those are the three Thomas Sowell questions. And I'm going to add my fourth, which is, on which date does this become an issue to you that worthy of speaking out?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, and this is why, and this goes back to what the other biggest problem with this, what it goes back to really, is the fact that, Obama knows he's not a stupid man. He is a smart man. But he knows that he's being a screaming, flaming hypocrite when he says the things he said. Harris, well, I don't know how smart she is, but she's still, she can fog a mirror, so she knows that what she's saying is hypocrisy because her administration did. I'm thrilled that Joe Biden's not saying anything for all sorts of different reasons. But the thing is, these people, they say these things knowing they're being staggeringly hypocritical based on what they themselves have personally done, and yet they still say it because they know, and this is the worst part, they know that there is a consuming audience that will say, oh, yeah, what Obama said, yeah, that's right. Oh, what Harris said, yeah. Why are there people, this is a rhetorical question that neither of us can answer without probably significant medication. Why why are there people out there that can live in such a stovepiped world that these insanely well-known things, I mean, any AI bot can find you everything that what you and I have just talked about, can verify it. Why are there people that actually believe this stuff? And so that's the worrying.
I'm going to go back to my answer from a couple weeks ago, which is I believe there's a significant portion of the population that would rather they be right than the country be successful overall.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that's exactly right. I do think that's exactly right. It's the short-term mentality. It's this is going to get memory hole day after tomorrow anyway, so I don't have to face it again. And it's good for me because my base will support me as long as there's a significant amount of base.
And to be clear, I'm not saying I'm immune from that. I'm as stubborn as they come.
Sure.
I'm hard-headed too, but I think there's enough times I can say, you know what, if I lost this argument, this didn't go the way I wanted, but the collective good benefit in the long run, it's a small price to pay.
Absolutely,
probably, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think that in this era that is the prevailing thought. Regardless of political affiliation or ideology, I think that it's which goes back to the fourth turning and the pendulum and all the things we talked about here. Is these moments are created by the moving generations and the spiritual awakening and the other kinds of events that unfold through the four turnings. But I think if I had to just like encapsulate it, I as far as the people saying it, I go back to what Adam Carolla has said for over 10 years now, which is, why would Kamala Harris say this? She's either stupid or she's a liar. And those are his words. And I would maybe say it a little nicer, like she's, unwilling to acknowledge the facts or unwilling to admit that she was wrong or something like that. Maybe it'd be a nicer way to say it, but stupid or liar is a nice little three word way to encapsulate it. And then why do people listen? Because they'd rather be right than the country be successful.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think, I think most of our politicians, like her, like Obama, like all, a whole variety, and there's plenty of them, both sides, and there's plenty of them on the right too, that are fundamentally utilitarian. They're 100% utilitarian. In other words, if it accomplishes my goal, then I will do it. The considerations that you and I would have. So, I am more than happy. I admit online whenever it happens, and it doesn't happen a lot, I don't think that I'm wrong.
I know where you're going with this, and I couldn't see a world where this could happen, Dave. But let's assume we lived in some fantasy land where you could be wrong once in a
while. There are times. There was one in the last week that I challenged somebody in a Charlie Kirk thing because I didn't. I've said in the Charlie Kirk debates I've had, I'll call them that. Look, I'm an old guy. I knew of Charlie Kirk. I've watched some videos as they scroll through, and so I can't claim to be an expert on everything he did. I mean, I've watched more Charlie Kirk in the past 2 weeks than I did in my entire life before, so I can't claim to be an expert. And somebody said something I found, that doesn't really sound right to me. And so I said, well, you're going to have to provide the receipts on that one. And he did. The guy provided the receipts. I said, okay, yeah, what Kirk said there was wrong. I oppose it. So, I'm more than happy to do that. The thing is that I don't think I could take something that was, well, Charlie Kirk said 2 + 2 is, deport everybody from Italy and say, well, he never said that when it's all over. I don't think I could be that hypocritical. In other words, that's a terrible example, but I don't think I could be that hypocritical like these, what I would call mercenary politicians and media people are, that will, back whatever their tribe says, whatever their tribal position is, and they will use the force of their. Obama's a great communicator. I mean, he is a brilliant communicator, and he can perfume the pig like nobody else can perfume the pig, right? I mean, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was fantastic at that too. Great, and Ronald Reagan was very good at that too. So JFK, great communicators. So and great communicators can say things that are completely false and get a whole bunch of people to believe in them and a whole bunch of people to die on that hill because they're great communicators. So I just don't think I could be that hypocritical.
Well, I think that you're missing a major motivation that these people have,
which is
power and money.
Yes. Yeah. Well, absolutely.
I mean,
that's utilitarian.
When the country was founded, being in Congress was a civic obligation that didn't pay very well.
Right.
And we called upon the presumably oldest and wisest of us to donate their time, essentially give up 3 months of their life every year to go serve the collective good.
Right.
And now, Ilhan Omar comes into office a handful of years ago with $16,000 to her name or whatever. Now she's got $30 million in the bank. Well, okay. Let's assume that half that is luck. There's still $15 million that came by some means, right? And so you got politicians have a completely different. Their motivation is not about success for the country. It's about their influence, their power, their status, and their pocketbook,
their money. That's exactly right.
I don't think it's all that much different for the media.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty much the same. Their influence, their status, their pocketbook, and their viability to continue. And the more they can get people to believe that they're the ultimate source of it and the ultimate authority, the more clicks they get, the more subscriptions they sell, the more whatever. And the more people believe the New York Times is the go-to source, the more New York Times can say things to prove that they're the go-to source, whether or not they're factual or not, it becomes secondary. Or whether or not they actually benefit the society as a whole becomes secondary.
And then in the fourth turning age, and then you say, well, how can that work? How can that physically work? It can work in a fourth turning, unlike it wouldn't work in a first turning.
No.
So in a fourth turning, we are so divided and so stovepiped and so tribal that the facts are irrelevant. We'll send donations to the people that make us feel righteous, especially in a fourth turning, because we no longer feel righteous because we go to church or because we're serving on a nonprofit board or all of these types of things. We have to feel righteous, and everybody needs to feel that they're righteous. I mean, I don't care if you're an atheist or if you're a believer. You need to feel like you're doing something.
Small percentage of the population truly believes that they're bad people, evil people.
Right. Even the bad people don't believe that they're evil people. This idea of honor among criminals and such. Well, my code's different, but I'd never be a snitch or whatever it happens to be. But in the fourth turning space that we're in right now, the time that we're in right now, the soil of society is such that those utilitarian power grab by saying whatever you need to say to maintain power, to maintain position, to maintain getting eyeballs and clicks and cash in the bank, that is the formula now. Because the person that, I have these discussions all the time. Are you MAGA or are you anti-MAGA? I'm neither. Well, right. Nobody knows how to handle that. They don't know what to do with that. So, the idea that you can evaluate something from the outside looking in and realize that you're going to say something to tick everybody off from time to time, and you're not going to do. That's probably why I'm not rich and don't have a big show. We haven't quite hit the 1 million mark in our
not yet.
Podcast.
We're almost there. And this era continues until it can't continue anymore. Then it all falls
until it implodes.
It's kind of the moral of the story.
Yes.
As you and I have said many times, gravity always wins.
Yep.
We're defying gravity as long as we can, but eventually gravity wins and it all falls apart.
Exactly right.
So this is a good segue into something you brought up last week, which is hate speech. So
yes,
Jimmy Kimmel, by some accounts, some people believe he was suspended or they thought he was fired when he was preempted for hate speech. Plenty of folks believe all the people celebrating Charlie Kirk's death and assassination was because he was putting out hate speech.
Right.
And you have some thoughts on that. I'd love to hear what those are.
Well, so there was some controversy about what Caroline Leavitt said about, we're not going to permit hate speech. And so we've got these sort of dueling concepts of free speech and hate speech. And, what is the First Amendment and all that?
Pam Bondi, I think, was the one that said that, wasn't she?
It was Pam. Yeah, no, you're right. Thank you. See, I can admit when I'm wrong. It was Pam Bondi. Yes, you're right. Yeah, Pam Bondi said that. And she was, and that was wrong. She shouldn't have said that. So
and she kind of sort of walked it back pretty quickly, and rightfully so.
Which is fantastic. So the problem that we have now is that we've redefined, and so many words have been redefined to sort of out of existence, out of any meaningful existence. So I'll give you a setup for this, a real brief setup for this. I was talking to somebody and they said something to the effect of, well, he seems like he was a nice guy, Charlie Kirk. Seems like he was a nice guy, but he was out spreading hate everywhere. I said, oh, okay, well, tell me how. well, and so, well, he's xenophobic, he's misogynistic, he's a xenophobe, he's a misogynist. Oh, really? Okay, well, show me what that is. And so what it ended up being is one person or he disagreed with the person I was talking to about certain, what's good for society. So is it true? So I'll take the misogyny one because that's one I've had a bunch of arguments about. And I told him, I said, I by no means endorse anything or everything that everybody has said. I don't even endorse things I used to say. So so the question is if somebody disagrees with your worldview, does that automatically make them a hater? Does that automatically make them somebody guilty of hate speech? So if somebody says, for instance, and this is, Charlie Kirk's clear position seems to be that the traditional family, and I'm not an expert, but I think I've got it. The traditional family is the best thing for society, where there is a woman who is having children because it turns out only women can have children. They haven't figured out how not to do that yet. Well, it's true. Biological women are the only ones that can have children. Although I was told one time that
we're already off on the wrong foot here, Dave. Like I can see we're going to have problems already.
Oh, that's hate speech by itself, isn't it? Right. So he's a supporter of the traditional family. Well, therefore, he's a hater of anybody that doesn't agree with that. He wants to set up a Taliban-like scenario, theocracy in the United States, where it's for Taliban, or what is it, the not Stepford Wives, but what's the one where they on TV?
Step Wives?
Anyways, it's that one where they force women to have children because the demographic.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, I'm thinking of something else. Okay.
I can't remember what it's called, but they wear red stuff on that. They're like red nuns or something. Anyway, so the question I ultimately got back to was, how does the belief in traditional family and traditional family values mean somebody is a hater? And number two question on that was, is the evidence from his life? So you're pulling up a few quotes and throwing a few quotes at me. Some I like, some I don't like. Is the evidence from his life, in terms of like his wife, the hundreds, if not thousands, of women he worked with, the prominent, very strong women in media that he worked with, who all don't seem to see him as misogynistic? Right. Does that all align with the idea that he hates women? Now, part of that discussion was, well, because I said, look, as a geek, I looked up the origins of the word misogyny, and it's misos gune, which from the Greek means hate women. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Hate women. I said, well, so misogyny means he hates women. I'm not seeing that in his life. You say that from these. Well, the definition of misogyny has expanded in modern times. It means through a number of things. And I'm like, okay, well, there's things that, yes, women work now. I've got, daughters that work. It's great. Well, I don't have any problem with women working. But just because you say the traditional family is the best thing for society does not automatically mean, one, you're going to set up a theocracy and prevent all the people that respect you and love you who happen to be women from working. And number two, it doesn't redefine the man as a whole, as a hater, as a misogynist. The problem being that we take and we label people as misogynist, xenophobe, racist, bigot, homophobe, transphobe, all of these different things. And we call those people by those nouns because they engage in hate. So the question really is, what is hate? And what should people be able to do in terms of their entire livelihood on air or in just their personal life in sharing their viewpoint? And this is where I think our society has gone off track by saying, and I said to one of the people I was arguing with, I said, look, looks like he's pretty good to the women around him. Looks like he said
something testified by the women around him.
Has testified, yes, and as he's admired by many, many women. And so if you're only going to take the things that he said and you're not going to take the evidence of his life. Actions speak louder than words, after all, and everybody agrees with that. And you're going to create a conglomeration of those things. Say a full picture of the man is his actions and his words, with emphasis on the actions. You cannot define him as a hater based on this, even if there's things you don't. Well, how should I respond? Here's how you should respond: the same way that I respond. I don't like this thing that he said. All this stuff he said over here, great. I said the same way I respond to President Trump. When I used the example earlier when people ask me, are you MAGA or are you anti-MAGA? I'm not. Neither. I'm neither. President Trump does something good. I'm like, yay, go President Trump. President Trump does something like this, his wading into this Jimmy Kimmel thing. Shut up, man. That's dumb. Don't do it. And so this is how we've got to rescue the language back, and this is why I'm interested. I texted you on Saturday when I was thinking about this stuff.
Yeah,
this is why I'm interested in rescuing the language from a complete pejorative view of things. It's great to talk about Charlie Kirk. Fantastic. Let's analyze. He's a public figure. He deserves criticism when he deserves criticism. He deserves praise when he deserves praise. But let's not create nouns for everybody and put them in stovepipes and call anybody that we disagree with, because really the definition, and there's more of this, I think, on the left. Maybe I'm biased. I think there's more of this on the left than there is on the right, but there is some of this exists on the right too. There's this impulse today to say anybody that disagrees with my definition of the best society is a hater, and therefore they should be shunned from current society. And that is not the definition of hate.
Well, I have two thoughts on this. One is more positive than the other. But before I get to my two thoughts, one of the things you said was actions speak louder than words, and that's something we can all agree upon. I don't think that that's something we can all agree upon anymore.
I suppose I should ditch that from. I suppose I should ditch everything we can all agree upon.
I would stop telling yourself that story, because I think that's a bit of a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the half glass is half full perspective. My immediate thoughts, not having prepared for this, these just off the top of my head. If you look back, let's just go back 30, 40 years.
Right.
All right. 40 years ago, what was the general consensus in our society about gay marriage?
Don't ask, don't tell, basically.
Well, I would say it was even more restricted than that. I would say 20 years ago is probably don't ask, don't tell. 40 years ago, it was more or less not.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing. Right? No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the paradox to me on this stuff is always, okay, the people who are anti-speech now got the things that they wanted through free speech.
Yes.
Gay marriage was not socially acceptable anywhere near the degree it is today 40 years ago.
Sure.
The way it got here is through debate and discussion and compromise. Now, whether or not you agree with how it went down or not, that is the modality of how it got here.
Yes, that's right.
So the people who wanted what we have now started out having to take small bites of the elephant. We want see gay marriage. We want, if you're dying, they should be able to come see you like a wife can go see a husband.
Right.
That was the argument, right?
Yep.
Then it evolved into, of course, they should have the same rights that heterosexual parents have as far as adoption and things like that. Then now it's kind of taken a different turn where now people can decide what gender they are, and that's much more socially acceptable. And even children can decide. They can make these decisions at 6 years old that they can't make about, I don't know, tattoos.
Right. Yeah. Right.
and taking scissors to school and things like that. They can make these permanent decisions. They can't have alcohol, I guess is a better example than taking scissors to school, but they can't have alcohol and they can't get tattoos, but they can decide what gender they are when they're 6 years old.
Right.
Okay. The path here from there is free speech.
Yes.
So the glass is half full part of me is like, okay, well, they just have so much momentum. Momentum is carrying them down this road and they don't know where to stop. And they're not used to being told no, quite frankly.
Sure.
Because they've kind of gotten everything they want. It's taken a while.
Yeah.
They've more or less gotten everything they wanted. So they don't have the muscle power to deal with people telling them no. So that's my glass is half full version.
Sure.
My glass is half empty version is much more cynical. And that goes back to one of the very first things that you and I talked about when we started doing this podcast was there's only two stories in humankind. One is my tribe was born with a righteous destiny by a creator of some sort, which grants us the ability to do whatever we want to you and your tribe. Right. And the other story is your tribe did such heinous things to me that retaliation of whatever kind is justified. That's the only two stories in humankind as far as countries and tribes and things like that, right? So the more cynical part of me says, well, if really what you want is to just get your way, a way to tell that second story of which your tribe wronged me so much that I'm justified in doing what I want is just lower the bar of what wronging me is.
Sure.
Where before you had to like murder my family and like rape my village and plunder our stuff and things like that. And now if you say a thing I don't like, that's enough justification for me to do the thing I wanted to do in the begin with.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I read a book a while back it was a book that talked about all the ways that somebody can be offended. And it was written by a very, very left-wing person in the Seattle area. And there was a chapter on microaggressions, for instance.
Right.
And there was another chapter on implicit bias. You're a racist, Dave, you just don't know it because the way you're acting. And microaggressions are, I really don't want to do that. Oh, is that because I look as, whatever it happens to be. And so
I saw a version of this on the internet today, a clip that I just scanned through. A woman got pulled over by a police officer and she said, "You pulled me over because I'm a trans woman, didn't you?"
Yeah.
As if the cop can see 70 yards away the kind of person. And
is it on your trunk? Does it say that on your trunk?
To the side? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, and so I think part of what happens is I think it's a smart comment you made about the momentum in particular, because I think what happens is people.
They were both smart comments. How dare you?
Well, the other one I'm still evaluating. It might also be smart, but I'll get back to you on that next week.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
When people start having societal success and they enjoy that success. When you and I in business, when we happen on a way to, a marketing campaign, I go to marketing because that's what I do, a marketing campaign, an operations way that really makes things better for a business. We want to build on that. We want to build on that. We don't want to stop and say, okay, I'm there. I've got what I wanted. Now I'm going to stop. Nobody does that. That's just not human nature to do that. So I think a lot of what happens is with these movements, it's like, well, we just want this. And when we get this, we'll be happy and we'll just go live our lives and it's all great. And what ends up happening is, oh, well, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can use these same things we just used to get to the 50-yard line, to get to the 40-yard line, to get to the 30-yard line. Why not? I mean, they did bad to us for all these years. Why not? We're due this. We're due this kind of reparation, if you will, or something like that. And so I think and that works. Again, as we said before, it works until it doesn't, and it works until people say, well, look, we went along with you on all these things and we saw your point on a lot of these things. The way you were treated was bad in these ways. But where you're going right now, we're just not along. We just can't agree with that. Well, that's because you're a hater. Again, we get to this process of designating any disagreement as hate. And this is the problem, designating disagreement as hate, which is one of the reasons I really enjoyed how Charlie Kirk did his debates. Like I heard somebody, I can't remember who it was, but I watched some of them. When he's talking to somebody, he'll say something. He put down his microphone. He just put it down.
Right.
He set it on the table and he let them talk. And then when he was ready to talk, he would pick it up again and he would talk to them. So that was an interaction, not a cudgeling, an attempt to force his will on somebody else. Now, if we got to that, if we got to the point that said, well, Brian, what you're saying right now, it sounds like it's opposed to foreigners. So, and I don't like the way that sounds. As opposed to saying, well, Brian, you're just a xenophobe. Both of those things could be the reaction to something that a person disagrees with another person about. The question is, if somebody says, well, I hate this group of people. Okay, we'll take him at their word. Fine, that's hate, right? If somebody says I hate this person or these people, take him at their word. But the problem is we lump everybody into that category that says, if I don't believe your policy or your position or where you think this fits in society, therefore you are a hater and you are this pejorative term, xenophobe, take whatever phobe. Phobes are my are one of my bugaboos, because phobe means you're scared of something. And people that use that word don't want somebody scared of something. But anyway, so if we ratchet the conversation to the point where we can have discussions with people and we can disagree with people without calling them names and without labeling them and putting them in this bucket of deplorables.
Well, but here's where you're getting off track, I think, is you are wanting discussion and an outcome that is as agreeable for everyone as possible. Is that
Yes, that's
correct?
true. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think that's what they want. I think they want their way.
You're right. Yeah, well, what we just talked about a few minutes ago is what they want. They want their clicks and their likes and their sponsorships and their speaking engagements
Well,
and the
and they
money
just
flowing
want
in.
the world to be seen and judged through their lens.
Yes. Yeah, well, and because their lens is what makes them money and makes them popular,
Gives them
fame,
status,
power.
and all the decisions they've made up to this point in their life are justified and
Right.
proven correct and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And that's where I go back to the notion that it's just atrophy of conflict's not the right word. Atrophy of resistance, maybe. And I don't mean resistance like armed resistance. I mean
Yeah.
resistance that just because you're a professor at Harvard and you say a thing, in 1920, professors wanted to be challenged. They wanted people to think.
Yes.
And what do you know? Some really smart people challenged professors and were proven right.
Yeah.
In that era. And now professors do not want to be challenged. They want people to shut up and think how
Right.
they want,
Right.
the way they want, through the paradigm they want, with the through the biases and worldview they have as right. And I think that they've atrophied the mental muscle of conflict and reason and all those kinds of things.
Well, that's why debate is lost. I mean, that's why debate as a skill is lost. That's why, I mean, all of our media, except for our podcast, all of our media in the world is designed around dopamine hits for the brain, infinite scrolling and outrage. And this is why, like on my social media, when I comment, I have a conscious discipline of looking for pictures of old Mustangs and sharing them as an aperitif, or as a palate cleanser for the soul, so we can.
Thank you. I don't know what aperitif means, so
Okay, well, it's French.
I don't have your Evergreen State College education, so I don't.
Well, if it was the Evergreen State part of me, it'd be like, dude, pass the joint. It's different.
Yeah. I think there's just part. Like I don't know the story of Spartacus as well as you do, I'm sure, but in the beginning, there was some justification for what Spartacus was doing.
Sure.
But then it got to his head and he ended up doing some pretty horrible things and he paid the ultimate price. If I understand the story, if I remember correctly, I don't see this as being that much different. I think that some of the ideas that they had were worthy of discussion and were worthy of society bending some. And then I think along the way, the momentum and lack of the ability, the just atrophy of the ability to have to deal with resistance and people who are correct in their opposition to the way you think, and accepting that and acknowledging that when it happens. I think that atrophy and the momentum, again, that's the glass is half full version.
Right.
The glass is half full is we want what we want and we'll play your game for a while, but we're going to continue lowering the bar to justify the actions we wanted to take anyway.
Right.
And it's probably all those things at one time.
I think it's all, and it depends on who it is too, because there's plenty of people on either side of the coin that truly believe the nonsensical things that they say. There's plenty of them in the masses, and that's why it works.
The people who think that everything Trump does is correct, I would put that same camp.
I totally would. I totally would. That's again why I can't say I'm MAGA or I'm not MAGA, because people will. Well, he said it before. He said that I could go out in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and they'd still follow me. Well, I mean, he understands the media.
He would lose me there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he understands the environment in which we're in, which is why I mean, I think that the sort of social sanction thing in the past, there was a lot of social sanction around not behaving honorably, not behaving kindly. There was, I mean, the props you got in the 50s or the 60s was different than the props you get today in society. And that's part of that collapse that, we just see playing out in front of us. And that's where a lot of this, designation of hate speech comes in.
Yeah. I the whole term, I kind of as soon as somebody says that, I just kind of discredit anything they say after that, quite frankly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
it doesn't matter which tribe they're in, because both tribes do it now.
Yeah.
If hate speech is one of the criteria used to determine the validity of somebody else's thoughts,
right?
I just kind of dismiss whatever you have to say after that. No, that's my
totally.
own bias. I'm not saying that's correct, and I'm exposing my own biases in my own worldview, which is probably not fair either. But it's become one of those like you're a phobophobe word, like transphobe. I'm not afraid of trans people. I just don't think kids should cut off their genitals at 6 years old.
There you go. There you go. And I think ultimately what I would, and like when I have these conversations with people, I don't have conversations with people for the most part, or not for very long at least, where they're just lobbing hate bombs all over the place. And they're, you're just a hater. Well, I have no time for you because I know I'm not, and I don't need your approval in my life.
What is a hater? I think probably the most accurate definition of a hater is somebody who vehemently disagrees with me and won't bend to my will.
Right. Well, that is the modern definition, and that's where in those conversations, what I attempt to do is say, okay, well, let's delve a little bit deeper. Let's kind of figure out what gets you going, and let's figure out if it's really this person's fundamental nature. If you have a noun and you say this person is this, right?
Yeah,
that's one thing. So Charlie Kirk is a xenophobe, is a racist, is a misogynist. If you say that, well, okay, now I'm gonna have to take you apart now, right? But on the flip side of that, if you say Charlie Kirk said some things that I think are xenophobic, okay, let's have a discussion. Let's talk about
and
this.
By the way, name a grown ass man where that wouldn't apply.
Yes, well, that's the other thing. Yes,
come on, all right. And I think the part that makes me the most angry about this, aside just from the weariness of enduring these kinds of conversations, is there was a time, and there still is parts of the world and parts in our country where actual real hateful things do happen that are 100% unjust.
Yes.
And all of that gets lost. And it's the guy, a good high character person who says something that Rachel Maddow disagrees with,
right,
is put in the same box as an actual card carrying Klan member. And that's completely wrong in my book.
Well, that's totally, and that's infuriating. And I tell you, the one place I think the worst word for all of that, the worst word that is used in that sort of designation is white supremacist. White supremacist used to mean a Nazi, a literal Klansman who literally wanted to send people, back to their country of origin, or who thought that
wouldn't employ people, didn't think they should earn similar wages, didn't think they were worthy of certain jobs.
And now we're told, like in Seattle, they said that teaching certain math they had to remove some math books from the library because they were white supremacist math books. I'm like, what do you do Nazi math? What's the deal here? So that drives me nuts.
That's the part that again, aside from just the weariness of the conversation, as soon as somebody says that, I don't have hope that there's any kind of meaningful conversation going to follow.
Right.
But the real infuriating part is lumping very different types of people in the same bucket for convenience sake. That just pisses me off to no end.
Totally agree.
All right. Well, as Dave said in the beginning, if you think we've got something especially right today in our conversation or something especially wrong as we explain to future generations what this moment in time is like, we'd love to hear your feedback. You can do that at unsilentpodcast.com. Rumble also has a great comment section. Until next time, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be Unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.